Square Enix in their conference. So how much of that did you see?
None.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So they led immediately into Final Fantasy VII Remake. That was the first thing they did. They showed a screen, which was like the opening menu in Final Fantasy VII with like the little hand icon and everything that said "New Game," "Continue," and then at the very bottom, "Remake," and they went ring, clicked it.
Clever. Oh, they actually make the noise too?
Yeah, it's clever.
Okay.
And they jump right into it, and so we got to see more gameplay of standard combat. We got to see gameplay against the boss, the Scorpion boss, and the bombing run section of the opening of Final Fantasy VII.
I'm watching pieces of it now.
And then they, so they went over,
God damn, it looks sexy, man.
Graphically, obviously, it looks fantastic. There's no two ways around that. Graphically, it looks really, really good. I'm going to see if I can find my Square Enix notes here.
Damn, dude. Dude, the battle system actually looks...
Yeah, so we got to learn a lot more. We got to learn a lot more about the battle system. So, first thing to get out of the way is that this first section of the game is 2 Blu-ray discs. For this first part. I'm going to guess a lot of that is because of 4K textures and like audio and cutscenes.
Jesus fuck.
So this is only Midgar, and it's 2 discs, 2 Blu-ray discs. Now, we still don't know how many releases this game's going to have to complete it. The language they used didn't instill a lot of confidence in me.
We thought it was going to be 3, but I mean, if this is...
So this is only Midgar, which is about 15%, stretch it 20, of Final Fantasy VII.
Oh boy.
So the first disc... or he said the first disc is Midgar only, so maybe not both discs. So the first disc is Midgar only, but we don't know. I don't fucking know. The language they used was fucking weird. And he said because, and this was a quote that I had, it's become a game in its own right. Midgar. So, it's really hard to get a bead on
So why
them.
don't they put out Final Fantasy VII Midgar?
Well, that's basically what it's going to be. And then
so we're
gonna
just going to do another one.
But,
Final Fantasy VII X, Final Fantasy VII Z, Final Fantasy VII 10 episodes later, $500 later.
But the thing that everyone's a little like, so the question marks are, how many parts is this going to be? And how long, based on those parts, how long is it going to really be before we get to the end of this remake? Because it's not going to all be as long as the development for this first part, because the first part went through a lot of crazy shit to get to where it is now. But you can't just reuse that many assets when you leave Midgar. Like, Final Fantasy VII's world is... You have to make a lot of fucking assets.
It's big.
It's big.
Yeah. Unless they're cutting out parts of the game. All right?
So, is there going to be 5 years in between every release? Probably not. But I'm not even sure, like I said in the last podcast that we were talking about this, I'm not even sure it will be a year. I think it's 2 years in between parts.
They can't do that.
And I think it's going to span almost a decade. I think it's going to be 6 to 8 years.
Don't say that.
I think it's 6 to 8 years.
Don't say that.
With the only thing that would stop that being that they're not going to pay as much attention to detail with the rest of the game as they did Midgar. There's a chance that they looked at Midgar from the original release and said, there's a lot more that should have happened here. And so we're going to spend more time here. Here's the other thing. There are characters that weren't originally in Midgar in the original release that are showing up in Midgar. And if you remember Final Fantasy VII enough, there are parts of Final Fantasy VII's like story bits and pieces that could have happened in Midgar, but didn't for the sake of gameplay. So is it possible that this first 2 disc stuff, even though it's just Midgar, doesn't mean that it's encapsulating just what happened in Midgar in the original Final Fantasy VII, meaning there might not be as much left over of the game as we think there is? And if that's the case, then maybe it's 5 years out from being completely done. But I don't know how we are any less than 5 years away from getting this entire remake. I don't know how that's possible. which means that this game is going to span the end of PlayStation 4's life cycle into PlayStation 5's and be 3/4 of the way through PlayStation 5's life cycle before the remake is completely done.
For one game? You mean to tell me, I gotta wait till my son starts school in order to finish this game? Is that what you're trying to tell me? Or maybe even be a year or 2 years in?
That's what it's looking like.
Hey, son, when you're in grade 3, Daddy be finishing Final Fantasy 7.
So, but with the language they used, I don't know how to read that any other way. I don't know how to see that any other way. And truth be told, we might not know until we get this first part, and we still might not know when this comes out. But that will be the first question that everyone has, it still is, how many parts is this going to fucking be? And how long are we supposed to be?
Starting to sound like it's going to be more than 3.
And like, but even if it wasn't, even if it was 3, how long is it? That's still like 5-6 years. Right?
Yeah. No, you're right. You do the math.
If it was a year between each one, I would be super impressed. I don't know how they would do it in a year between each.
A sweatshop.
Basically.
24/7, 7 days a week, cranking out Final Fantasy 7.
Even if it was 18 months. Still, I don't know how they do that. So, anyway. So that language was very odd to me, and it did not instill a lot of confidence. Then we got into the gameplay and stuff, and we started seeing it, and we saw a lot more of the combat.
Looks pretty. I'm not going to lie, man.
Graphically, it looks fantastic. There's no two ways around it. It looks amazing, and it sounds amazing. The soundtrack is there. It's revamped. It's Nobuo Uematsu's legacy. The shit's dope. The action real-time combat is what we're looking at, and they still have an ATB. They still have an ATB bar. So they've broken it up like this. You have your real-time combat, which is your light heavy attack like an action game.
Yeah.
And then you have an ATB bar. And when you use your ATB bars for abilities and stuff of that nature, not your regular attacks, but your abilities. So whether you're using spells or whatever, that's your ATB bar. Your ATB fills up over time like it did before.
Yeah.
And it also gets charged based on your normal attacks that you're dealing during combat.
Yeah.
So you're building that up, and then you have the ability to use your ATB
Limit
bar
break.
for whatever else. Not just your limit, but your limit break is probably also like damage that you take and over time. But the ATB bar is, in the original game, was what you waited for to finish before you could even attack.
Mm-hmm.
But now this ATB bar represents your ability to use abilities that aren't just your standard attacks.
Gotcha.
So your standard attacks are all the time.
So you can just keep going. Just
And
basically
then-
keeping the action going, and then if you want to
and
do
then
an actual attack,
Now you've built up to do like
sword
fire
slash,
or whatever
ice.
thing.
Summon.
You'll have
Potion.
that stuff will be ATB
Revive.
bar. So
Phoenix down.
when you do that, and you can dump into it, it goes super hyper slow motion. It doesn't stop completely, but for all intents and purposes, it's basically stopped. And you get to when you're using your ATB bar, and then you choose your stuff,
And then it speeds up again.
and then it speeds back up again, and it's super
That's kinda
slow, and
cool,
it looks dope, and all the particle effects stay
That's
in the
pretty
air,
cool.
and it looks really cool.
Because it'd be weird if they kind of stopped the action completely.
Yeah, so
So-
they did a very good job with it. Then the follow up question to that is when you're doing action combat like that, so you have AI partners, obviously. So Barrett, Tifa, whatever, they're acting on their own, as well. Micro with the super chat saying, Adam, I called it. The whole game's being released March 2020 on 2 discs. Next E3 will be the Final Fantasy VIII remake. If I'm wrong, stone me to death. Well,
There is a 0 chance.
I don't want to go to jail for killing you.
There's
so
a
I'm gonna
0 chance that
pass
whole
on
game is.
But I'll promise you right now that what we're getting is not the entire game in 2020.
Hell no.
I promise you. And if it is the entire game on 2 discs, and Midgar is only 1 disc, what the fuck does that say for the rest of the game?
It'd have to be Game of Thrones, pretty much.
Just fast forward.
Yeah, it's like the first bit, real good. Let's fuck the rest. We got Star Wars to make. No.
Good luck with that. Final Fantasy VIII remake, literally never going to happen. Ever.
No.
Ever.
It's not as Die Hard. It's
The only games that, if you were going to guess at which Final Fantasy games are going to get remade after 7,
7 and 10
at best,
7 and 10.
6, 9, 10, no.
You don't think 10?
6 and 9, no.
10 did really well.
10 did well, but it doesn't need to be remade. It still looks fine.
I suppose you're right.
And
6 definitely could be redone
6
on the
6
Switch or
is
something.
super fucking. It is considered by people that were old enough to play it before
the greatest.
7,
Yeah.
the greatest of all the Final Fantasy games. And that was a Super Nintendo game. So if there was going to be one brought up, like Final Fantasy 14 has a raid boss that's Kefka, which is the bad guy from 6. Dude, if you got fucking these graphics or better with Final Fantasy 6, people would literally fucking have an aneurysm.
Yeah.
For that shit. So
Dude,
that
if
would be
you just remade it,
that'd be my guess.
If you just remade it with updated graphics for your handheld, people would be all over.
That's what people are wanted with 7, but now we're getting this.
Yeah.
So, going back to the combat, again, AI partners, and so people get a little antsy with that because it's AI. You never know, how much autonomy does the AI have? Can they choose when to use a potion and go through your items? Can they choose when to use abilities on their own? Things like that. That's like one of the major concerns when you have things, AI partners, because they can often fuck you. You have a plan in your head, and they jump the gun and they use an item, and then you can't use them again. And you're like, well, fuck. Thank you for killing me.
Yeah.
Right. So we still don't know 100%, but they do go through the normal attacks and stuff on their own, and then you can they have a dedicated button. I can't remember which button it is, but you can rotate in real time through the characters.
Oh, that's cool.
And then so when they build up ATB, rotate through slow motion.
And that's cool.
Do their thing.
Yeah.
But we don't know if there's there are other RPGs in the past that have done things with AI partners where you can literally give them sets of commands that based on what's happening in combat, you are allowed to do this.
Okay.
Which frees up a lot of micromanagement that doesn't need to happen in everyday in normal combat. When you get to a boss, you probably want as much as humanly possible. Mm-hmm. But in normal combat, sometimes it's nice to just say, look, if your health is below 25% and I haven't already done it, give yourself a high potion. Stuff like that. So we don't 100% know yet, at least to my knowledge.
All right.
But it's still, at the very least, they have a dedicated button, immediately switch, user abilities, swap back out, everything. I think they're trying to keep the pace going. The other thing that I really noticed that looked great, at least in the boss fight, the normal combat, it still looks really good and everything, but what they did a very good job of with the Scorpion boss is the transitions between the stages of the battle. When you're in the middle of that combat, it just rolls right into what's essentially a cutscene, but it's happening in real time. And then it's fluid from within the fucking battle. So everything looks cinematic. So it just looks like a giant cutscene, but you're taking part of this cutscene.
That's dope.
Which looked really fucking dope. And then the other thing that they had was cover. They have cover system. So you'll remember that the Scorpion boss had the tail laser. Mm-hmm. When you get him down to a certain 50% health, he starts fucking you with a laser.
Final form.
So they're in that battle, and I'm guessing this might be more about bosses and stuff. Hard to say how much they have strewn around the world to make use of cover for regular fights. But they had stuff set up, and Cloud is yelling to Barrett, explaining cover to Barrett. As the game's going on. When he's powering up, this is coming. Get behind cover. The cover can be destroyed, but it absorbs the damage of the shot.
That's
again,
cool.
all in real time.
That's cool.
Whatever. That's cool. Something you'd want to see in an action combat thing. You don't want to just be running around.
Monster Hunter or something. You use
because Monster Hunter is fucking smashed action combat.
Yeah.
So that was cool. Again, destructible cover. And then the other thing. Oh, there's something else I have written down here. I call it dynamic events, which is the best I could come up with on the fly when I was watching it. So at one point, the Scorpion boss actually has Cloud picked up in his claw, and it's holding him in front, and he's getting fucked on, right? And then Barrett, so the player switches to Barrett and runs up and then shoots to get Cloud released from the boss's grip. I'm assuming otherwise Cloud was going to get absolutely dummied.
Yeah.
So stuff like that also seems to be a thing where there are events that can happen within the battle where you might have to attack a certain part of the enemy to, weaken it whatever.
You're selling me on this. I'm liking it.
And then they followed that up with, you might remember in Final Fantasy 13 and some of the subsequent games where they had a stagger system where if you hit the enemy with enough of what they were weak to. You
fucks
build up
them
a
up.
stagger bar, and then you break their stagger, and then for a period of time, you can do massive damage
Yeah.
before the stagger bar resets, and then you continue the process over and over again. And that was kind of like the crux of Final Fantasy 13's combat system.
Yeah.
They have that in this game. To what degree, I'm not 100% on, but at the very least, it looks like it's a similar thing. They might be weak to certain things. The stagger bar is there. You can break the stagger. You do bigger damage.
Damn.
So that's in there too. And that was all I noticed about the combat. I tried to pay as close attention as could. This was playable at the E3 booth. So if it isn't already there, I suspect we're going to be seeing articles from everyone that's got their hands on it, maybe in a couple of videos that will give them their first impressions of getting their hands on it. How does the combat feel? How does it play out? And not just see what they're showing on the E3 stage. But if they're showing it off and it's playable, they must be pretty confident in it at this point.
Yep.
And so it's probably pretty solid. We also got, the internet exploded. We got Tifa's reveal, finally.
Great.
We hadn't seen Tifa until now, or Sephiroth. Nobody gave a fuck about Sephiroth, though. He looks like a band member, a boy band member.
Great.
It's Sephiroth. But Tifa got revealed, and everyone losing their minds. Looks like Tifa. That's about it.
Okay.
I will say the one thing I noticed is that the characters in the game, not Uncanny Valley, but there's something about their faces that look fucking odd. And I follow a guy on Twitter who's an incredible artist. His name is Art Germ. And he noticed this too, and he did a quick little edit and did a side-by-side of his edit versus Tifa in the game. He basically just used Photoshop to reshape and do some stuff with it. And it's subtle, but my brain went from something's fucking off here to, oh, that's a person.
Okay.
So there's something weird that the modelers did with whoever they had for the modelers for this. They still look good, and most people probably aren't going to notice it, but some people it might heighten the Uncanny Valley effect because the proportions of the face and stuff were a little fucking weird. But otherwise, Tifa looked great. She didn't have fucking cannons on her chest. They gave her shorts underneath her skirt, so it wasn't like every time she kicked somebody you saw her grandchildren. There was nothing like that was going on. So that was nice. So thumbs up for that, and awesome. And that's it. March 3rd, 2020.
Great.
So when we get the first wave of whatever the fuck, that's assuming that it doesn't get delayed. And that was that. So that was the Final Fantasy VII remake. After that, what were the highlights? Final Fantasy VIII Remaster.
Great.
They lost the gold disc to Final Fantasy VIII. Everyone knows this because it's fucking... Of course they did. So they don't even have the original assets really all that much anymore. They had to get them from other places to the best of their ability. And then so they updated character models and stuff. They are massive changes. They go from 5 pixels to actually looking like people. So it looks good, cleaned it up really well. Up-res menus and stuff so that they look sharp and everything. So you're playing it on a big screen. It looks good. It's Final Fantasy VIII. So if you like Final Fantasy VIII, this is probably going to be the version to play. And then following that, the big one from Square, which was a little out there, Marvel Avengers. Did you see this? So this is actually an Avengers game, full blown. And they had a big cinematic for it. And they're putting a lot into this. So this is a standalone, so it's not comics, and it's not movie related. It's its own thing
right.
Entirely. And no licensing for the faces of any of the actors that have done any of these roles. So the first thing that you notice is none of the characters look like how you've become accustomed to for a decade now, which put a lot of people off. But at the same time, sitting there going, guys, I don't know how much money you think, would actually cost. Do you realize how much money it would cost?
No.
Robert Downey by himself bankrupt this fucking game.
Yep.
Don't even bother.
Yeah.
The voice acting that they had, all of them, it sounded fine. They sounded like their characters. It was good. But it's, dude, it kind of sounds like Anthem, but with Avengers. Where there are scenarios and stuff that you go into, and you can play with friends and co-op. They plan to have a release of more heroes within the Avengers universe over time for free. Also, the new scenarios that come out with also going to be free. So my immediate red flag is, well, how are you going to
make money?
Make money, which means probably cosmetic costumes, alternative costumes for heroes and things like that. But it, if you wanted to find out more, guys, if you're listening to this, there's they gave a big section of this event to this game, so they're putting a lot into it. And the cinematic looked good, and it sounds intriguing to me that somebody would do something that's out of the comics, out of the movies, put that much time and effort into it, and are building out a game where they are planning to put more scenarios, more heroes, etc. moving forward. It sounds like something that could work. I just need to see gameplay, which is what we were really lacking. But maybe for people who are fans of Avengers in general, it's possible. The voice actors that are doing these are people that you probably know. If you're Nolan fucking North, who is in every video game for 20 years, as well as two people, I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but two of them who are part of that you know on Critical Role. Not Matt Mercer, but there are two other characters that are part of that show that are voice acting in this. And then the one other guy, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he's another very well-known voice actor. So there's some big names behind it. There's some big money behind it.
Cool.
We just have to wait and see how that pans out.